there's no excuse for the artists of my generation. You
Mhm.
know, when we played the concert for New York, every living icon in music, I'm not talking about me, but was there. And they sang for New York. They sang for America. They condemned Osama bin Laden. Many of them were Jewish.
Mhm.
But right now, you hear nothing, nothing from the music industry.
John,
Hey,
how's it going?
hey, man, I apologize for missing our last meeting.
It's okay. It happens. You're a busy guy. I understand. Probably got a lot more going on than I do. So
Well, no excuses. I apologize. That's not like me, so I'm
no
sorry.
worries. No worries. Hey, the most important thing we got it. We came back and made it happen again. So
Thank you. Appreciate that.
where are you at in the world right now?
I'm finally back in LA.
Uh-huh.
Been gone for a month, on tour and running around the world. So nice to be home. Where are you?
I'm in Chicago.
Oh, nice.
Hmm.
Beautiful. Yeah.
It's actually nice today outside, John. The cold has left us, so it's like a 70-degree. Feels like I'm in LA, 70 degrees and sunny. So I'm taking it.
You deserve it. Yeah. Yeah.
Thank you.
We were a few weeks ago and we had to drive to Fargo in the snow,
Oh man, yeah,
in the middle of April. Yeah.
it was
Yeah.
cold. It was cold
Yeah.
and snowy. So yeah, this is it just changes on a dime. It goes from snow and freezing to warm. So that's how life in the Midwest.
Well, and you got a good quarterback for your football team, so everybody's
Yeah,
happy.
it's
Yeah.
finally.
Yeah.
First time in my lifetime I can go into a season with some expectations and
Yeah.
feeling good about it.
Yeah, no, it's exciting. I think, we're all excited to see how he does, and
Yeah,
all the USC people, particularly out here, are
that's right,
excited for him.
California kids. So only good things I've seen and from what I've watched and heard. So people are just over the moon here, excited about Caleb.
Yeah, no, it's going to be fun. I think you're going to have a great run with him.
Absolutely. You following some of the sports going on now? We have the NHL playoffs, NBA playoffs.
Well, fight for fighting, right? So,
That's right,
I'm
hockey.
a huge hockey guy, and obviously we have a lot of history with the LA Kings and the Blackhawks. So,
Uh-huh.
I was actually blogging the Kings in the 2012 when they won the Stanley Cup, and a lot of those guys are friends of mine. So, we have great kind of respect and a lot of history with the Blackhawks. So, my Kings, we'll see how they do tonight. They're
Yeah, I
one.
mean they're on hanging on a thread right now. So
Yeah. Yeah, I don't have a lot of hope, but yeah, it's a great time of year, baseball, NBA, hockey, the
yeah,
draft, it's a good time to be a sports fan.
absolutely. And where were you on tour, by the way? What cities did you hit that you came back from?
So I was in the Midwest. I played Chicago. I played Northwestern.
Oh, really? Man, I wish I knew this in
Yeah,
advance. It's right
yeah. I wish
by
we.
me.
It was a special show because I had a lot of the high school kids that did my Let Music Fill My World project were there at the show. And so that was special to see them again. And then I went to Israel for a week, and then I
Mhm.
came back and I was on the West Coast. I basically flew from Israel to Portland and then did Washington, Portland, and California last week and just
Wow.
finished Friday. So it's been quite the whirlwind.
Yeah, you've been all over. Uh, how is it out there in Israel? How are things there? Were you there doing a concert or just visiting or whatnot?
Well, I wrote a song called Okay,
Right.
with the theme We're Not Okay that really resonated around the world, particularly in Israel.
Yes.
And on my break, I was asked to go over and I met with many of the soldiers, I met with many of the hostage families, and I
Mm.
performed Superman in OK at Hostage Square on Saturday night, which just coincidentally was the same night that Iran attacked. So it was quite an experience
Wow.
that I'll never forget. But yeah, it was important to go, show some support for them, and especially the hostage families who frankly feel abandoned. So
Yeah.
it was a very heavy trip, as you can imagine.
I can imagine. I mean, how does it change you? I mean, just witnessing that up close. I mean, especially these hostage families that I can't even fathom. Most of us can't fathom what it's like to not know where your loved one is or what's happening with them and just being on this edge constantly. I mean, that must be excruciating thing, a nightmare, living a real life nightmare. How it kind of impacted you? Because I can imagine you'd probably come out a changed man after that sort of experience.
Well, kind of with my songs, I've met with people who've been through terrible tragedies. I played Superman at the concert for New York, so I'm kind of used to talking to people who are suffering. I've never seen anything like this. I've
Mhm.
never experienced anything like this. To sit with the fathers telling stories about their children, um, as you said, it's excruciating. There's really no words. All you can do is listen, and you
Mhm.
can let them know that they're supported, and that whatever they see on the news, there's tens of millions of Americans and people around the world who care about them, who love them, who are every day praying for the hostages to come home. But yeah, it's just excruciating. It's I can't, my son went with me
Oh
to
wow.
Israel, and he's 24,
Mhm.
and two of the families I met with, their sons were 24 years old,
Mm.
that were hostage as we speak. So
Wow.
kind of have him sitting there, you could, close your eyes and switch seats with the fathers. And so yeah, but at the same time, it was good for us to go and performing there. I think, my performance there has kind of made an impact. So I think
Mhm.
that kind of hopefully brings the hostages back to the forefront of the discussion. But yeah, it's a crazy world right now, Jim. It's a crazy world.
Really is. I mean, one thing after another, it's just constantly something going through. Just look at the last 5 years, with COVID and the lives changing and the wars in Ukraine and this. It's never ending, John. It's a crazy, scary world when you think about it. We kind of might be on the outside of some of this stuff, but man, it's a struggle every day. And I'm sure you seeing sort of things up close and hearing just hits you differently, I'm sure.
Yeah, well, I went to Ukraine a year and a half ago too to record a song
Yeah.
with Ukrainian orchestra. So I've kind of been able to kind of experience what these people are going through. And yeah, it's scary times. My song "Okay" is basically we're not okay, and something's broken in the
Absolutely.
world. And we're seeing that on our college campuses as we speak. So
Mm.
but I think people of conscience have been hesitant to stand up because I think they're afraid of being called a name or, something. But I think those times need to be over, because I think it's important for people of conscience to stand up and really push back on some of these folks who are trying to tear down civilization. And that's exactly what it is.
Do you think there's misinformation from what you've kind of gathered, especially on college campuses? Impressionable young people,
Yeah.
have a voice for sure. We've seen with elections and everything with social media. What do you think's kind of going on? Because you kind of see a divide now, more so. I've noticed, especially between what's going on in Israel and with Palestine. There's just been this divide among young people too, especially. That's what you've noticed, sort of thing. At least what I have. What do you think this kind of stems from in a way from what you've observed?
Well, I think, in many of our universities, the faculty is very radical leftists, and they've been teaching the kids for a long time. And I think we've kind of expected that, once kids get out of college, they'll have to get a job and they'll have families, and maybe some of this kind of radicalism will not stick with them. But I think that was naive. So I think for the younger generation, they're being fed this dogma that it's
Mhm.
not about right or wrong. It's about oppressor versus oppressee. But you know, there's no excuse for the artists of my generation. Um, you
Mhm.
know, when we played the concert for New York, every living icon in music, I'm not talking about me, but was there. And they sang for New York. They sang for America. They condemned Osama bin Laden. Many of them were Jewish.
Mhm.
But right now, you hear nothing from the music industry.
Yeah, I
And
wonder why. I'm curious actually why. You might have some insight here too. You don't. You're right. Yeah, you don't hear much at all.
well, I talked to some people that in the room will say, yes, Hamas is evil. Yes, release the hostages.
Right.
But they'll say, well, if I come out and say that, I fear for myself, I fear for my family, I don't want my concerts protested. And I say to them, you're not wrong. I'm feeling that right now. I'm getting a lot of pushback. I get the threats.
Hmm.
But those arguments that they're using are the same arguments that were used in 1938 before the Holocaust, where good people remain silent. And the end of my video, my OK video, is Martin Luther King saying,
Yes.
silence in the face of evil is complicity. And frankly, we're seeing a lot of complicity in the arts, which is really saddening and disgraceful.
Yeah, because arts are always the first ones on the forefront, to sort
Think
of,
so? Yeah.
yeah, you would
Yeah,
think so.
right.
Yeah,
Yeah.
they're always
Yeah.
on the forefront, especially with music and creatives.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's where it kind of starts, because they do have that mass appeal to people who listen to music, who watch films and shows and all that, and yeah, but like you're right, you haven't seen that. It's been a divide and it's been sort of quiet too, which is surprising, really. And you mentioned too, a lot of performers are Jewish, and it is surprising not to hear them, and see them really in that way. So hopefully things change. And you mentioned, okay, the video is just one of the most powerful videos I've seen. I mean, it's startling to watch it, just like I hear the song in the background, but you see the visuals and they're just like jaw dropping, for so many ways. Like whoever put that video together was just incredible job of really kind of depicting of what's really going on. I think through the video you can get a really good of idea what's been happening, and it hits you in a certain way.
Well, thank you. Yeah, we worked a lot on that. And as you said, they're just images, they're just video clips of
Mhm.
what's happened. I'm not in it. It's not opinion. It's this is what's happening.
Yeah.
And I think that's why it's resonated. And to this day, it's still resonating. And that, singing the song at Hostage Square. But yeah, I think people kind of want to forget what happened on October 7th. I don't think people, forget what happened on 9/11. I
Right.
haven't forgotten what happened on 9/11. And so many people want to pretend October 7th never happened. And being in Israel and meeting the families and seeing, for myself, the atrocities and look, I'm a guy who cares for an Israeli child, a Palestinian child, a Ukrainian child, an Afghan child, all the same. But
Mhm.
if you really care about Palestinians, you have to understand that under Hamas, there is no hope. There is no freedom. So if you really care about Palestinian children, you have to, free Gaza from Hamas because that
Mhm.
that is a evil, evil group with a death culture, and there's no hope as long as Hamas is in Gaza.
Yeah, that's well said in so many ways. Has it always been a sort of your sort of in a sense passion, or just thing that you were drawn to the events of the world and trying to bring that in your work? Because it seems like looking bad, you're always, your songs have this message of uniting and kind of opening up eyes, and just it has always a powerful tone, but it also has always a connection to the world at the time of what's going on. Has this always been a thing, a sort of a message you wanted to convey through your music?
Not intentionally. I think, I've always had great love and respect for our troops, appreciate our freedoms. I write songs about our troops. When Superman kind of became that song for 9/11, I started touring with the USO and meeting with our first responders and, work with the Gary Sinise Foundation. So I've always kind of loved our troops and our first responders. I've kind of had a disdain for, celebrities who like to lecture us on politics, right? That's always annoyed
Because
me.
they don't know a lot of times what's
And
going
also
on
it's like,
too.
yeah, but
Yeah.
but at the same time, the counter is, if you listen to the 60s and the protest songs, music had a role to play in talking about what's going on. So, Afghanistan really triggered this cycle for me. When we abandoned our allies in Afghanistan, I wrote a song called Blood on My Hands that became a voice for many of our Afghan veterans. So I saw how that mattered to them,
Mhm.
and um, and I had no plans to write another one. But then Putin invades Ukraine, and had no plans to write another one. And then Hamas commits the atrocities on October 7th. So this is something that I take no pleasure in doing.
Yeah.
But in my mind, they're not political messages. They're moral messages. Abandoning your allies and Americans to terrorists in Afghanistan, that's a shameful thing to do as a nation, to not support Ukraine on, when they're being kind of Putin's trying to reestablish Soviet Union committing atrocities. It's like, that's what America is. That's what we do. We support, people under siege.
Yeah.
And then, same with Hamas. If you can't call Hamas evil without words like context, something's really wrong. So that's for me, that's really what they are. They're moral messages But of course, in this day and age, everything's political.
Mm-hmm. It's wild because I mean I grew up on your music. I was a teenager when Superman, 100 Years, all these songs were coming out. You know, now I understand the context so much more too to a lot of them too. So it's interesting being a teenager. You just love the lyrics and the the sound of the music, but now you kind of understand it more too. Looking back at them and listening, re-listening to a lot of those hits. You've been through that age, and that was kind of prior to the media, the social media kind of come into what
Yeah.
we are now as a society. It's so different. You just think about 14, 15 years ago, and it's such a different world. How do you kind of view it now with not only, you always kind of sharing the message to the world through your music, but what you kind of seen now in this world? Do you think we're progressing with sort of the accessibility we have to each other with social media and sort of the digital age that we're in? Or maybe it's kind of taking us a little bit backwards. Like, how do you kind of feel about that, whether in a musical sense and just in a societal sense?
I think like anything, it's a double-edged sword. I think
Hmm.
musically, being an old guy, I think, I miss the age of records. I
Yeah.
miss the age of record stores,
CD
where
stores for me, it's like,
CDs. Yeah,
yeah.
I mean, where you actually had 12 songs and maybe your favorite song wasn't the song on the radio and you could listen to like The Dark Side of the Moon and it's really an experience. And
Mhm.
I miss those days. I miss artists that play their own instruments. Uh I miss artists that sing without auto tune. But but on the other hand, the beauty about the internet and social media is you're not beholden to a huge record company to give you a shot.
Mhm.
Anybody can find an audience. Many huge artists have broken through social media. Also, you don't have to go into a studio and spend $3,000 a day to record your music. You can do it on your laptop at home and make incredibly sounding music. So I think, like anything, it's a double-edged sword. I think what I lament most about kind of our children, the generation, is so many kids now are addicted to their phones.
Yeah.
They don't get in the room together. They don't socialize together. They're not around other people. They communicate through their phones and they don't learn how to socially um, integrate into society. They're kind of all in their little kind of dwellings, in their Instagram dwellings. And
Yeah.
I think that is a big problem. That is a big problem. And they also don't get outside. They don't play sports. They don't go camping. They just sit on their phones and live in that kind of, ethereal world. So that worries me as a dad.
Yes.
But it is what it is, and things change, and as I said, there's always the good, the bad, and the ugly,
Mhm.
and for me, I do miss some of those days where I didn't have my phone stuck to me for 20 hours a day.
It's insane. I mean, I was just on that cusp of the generation right before cell phones. So I'm kind of when I got into college, cell phones became a thing really that everyone had. But like, yeah, I can't imagine. Like, I grew up in the parks, playing basketball, running around. You're gone all day in the
Yeah,
summer, and that's like that's part of growing up. But now when there's John, when there's like 5-year-olds with their own tablets and cell phones, it just blows my mind. Like, when do you become a child? When do you do the
yeah.
fun kind of run around and just have your childhood? Because now I feel like kids are growing up so quick and they're so advanced with technology and everything. It's like, well, you're kind of already a teenager slash adult when you're a definite child. It's really kind of wild how things are progressing, and like I wouldn't want that. I wouldn't want to grow up in that age. I think I liked growing up, still having the CDs and sort of having that freedom without the distraction of the digital age in a sense.
I'm with you 100%. Yeah, certainly the innocent of youth is being lost because you get fed stuff on the internet and on TikTok and a lot of it is as kind of fed through some of the China and some of the messaging that I think is not healthy for our kids. So yeah, it's I think parents have a much harder job now
Yeah.
than our parents did, with all the media and all the chaos that's going on in the world. But on the other hand, I connect with people halfway around the world every day. So
Pretty incredible.
and we get on Zooms and we write songs and it's so like anything, it's, every generation kind of has that kind of, social, culture shock. And we just have to ride with it and try to like use the best of it and teach our kids, to have a little maturity. And maybe I appreciate the parents who don't give their kids a phone till they're 15
Oh
years
yeah,
old,
that's great. You
Yeah.
can hold that out and you instill that, sort of thing. Yeah, I think that's great. If you can still kind of pull that off. I feel like sometimes parents use that as a crutch too. Like, oh, here's a tablet, keep yourself occupied, or
Yeah, yeah.
in a sad way, instead of just like holding out these sort of things, where you really don't need them. At that age, you don't need a cell phone, because you're with your parents when you're 6 or 7 all the time. So yeah, that's well put. I feel like the same thing is always about music too. Like each generation kind of misses their own generation and like
Yeah.
despises the new stuff, like today's music, like, oh, it's horrible and all that. um do you have like a favorite generation of music and performers or whatnot? I mean, I think you always kind of tie in what you were in a sense growing up. When your formative years, I think that's the music always that's going to stay with you. For me, it was like the alternative rock of the early 2000s. I think that's my sort of music. When I see these bands now performing or hear that music, it takes you back in time, to those formative ages for you.
You're exactly right. The from, 15 to 25, that's always going to be our favorite music, and that's the way it should be.
Mhm.
For me, it was the 70s, right? The 70s singer-songwriters. Of course, Billy Joel, Elton John, Joni Mitchell, and then the classic rock bands, Zeppelin, The Who, for singers, of course, Freddie Mercury,
Oh, what a
Steve
great age,
Perry,
man.
so yeah, I think we always have that kind of in us, and it makes sense. The only thing I lament right now is because so much music is created digitally, and there's 10 songwriters on every song, and the same
Mhm.
producers are producing a lot. I ask myself, what songs of, say, the 2020s are we going to hear 20 years from now?
Mhm.
Because I think that's really, um, what separates kind of, um, hit music history from like the hit of the day. It's like what songs stand the test of time?
Mhm.
And certainly the 70s stand the test of time. Of course, your generation of Nirvana and Pearl Jam,
Yes.
Soundgarden, of course, they certainly stand the test of time. But and I may be wrong, but I don't hear a ton of songs now that I'm like, oh, definitely in 20 years I'm going to hear that song.
Yeah, I
Um,
agree. I
yeah,
think there's something longevity about certain songs. And you know what's interesting too? I feel like some of the songs for the newer generation weren't maybe used to the performers and bands you mentioned are brought back in shows and movies.
yeah.
Like you had Nirvana's song in a new Batman movie, coming back, and people were like, what is this? What's this song? It's so cool. It's like, no, it's Nirvana. It's been around since the 90s, that song. And it was just in the new Batman movie. So it's kind of interesting. And your songs, I've seen them appear on shows too, and films in a sense too. So I feel like sometimes the TV aspect of it thing brings back the music too to new audiences that weren't familiar.
And video games, right?
Oh,
So
and
many
video
video
games,
games. Yeah,
huge. Oh, that's even
yeah.
probably number one now. It's for the youth,
Yeah. But
Yeah.
it is wild when you look at an audience and you see, maybe teenagers or young people who are singing my songs who were not alive when I wrote them.
Yeah.
They weren't born. But it's as a songwriter, there's nothing better to see that your music can stick around and that people find it. My kids, they're in their mid-20s, but they know everything about classic rock. They love the classic rock and they love those bands. And so it is interesting. So how many younger people do love the Led Zeppelins of the world,
Mhm.
the Billy Joels, which I think is a testament to those artists.
For sure.
Because to me that was the golden age of kind of rock pop. And it's no coincidence we still, have breakfast with the Beatles every Sunday.
Well said. Even your songs, do you it's I'm sure kind of weird, like, oh, what's your favorite song that you've done? It's like, oh, which is your favorite child? They all have different
Yeah.
meanings and time frames in your life in a sense. But is there a song that keeps on kind of coming back to you that maybe surprised you that how people have taken it taken into that song? Is there anyone that kind of stands out that maybe surprises you that people really hold a special place to?
There's a couple. You know, I have a song called Two Lights, which is about our military families that
Hmm.
people, especially our troops families, uh, is important to them. I have a song called I Just Love You about kind of about my daughter that was never a single, but parents always ask to hear that at the shows, which is sweet. But I still, I'm very fortunate that some Superman in 100 Years, I still enjoy singing. And I
Hmm.
find myself, in both of those songs, whatever age I'm at. And I know a lot of artists kind of get sick, of playing their hit songs because they play
Yeah.
it 30,000 times. But there's a few songs of mine I wouldn't mind never playing again, but it's not those. I still enjoy playing those, and they still have that meaning for me, like when I wrote them. Um, but yeah, and then some of the new songs too, to see people, bring Ukrainian flags and ask for "Can one man save the world?"
Wow.
That's meaningful in a way. That song was never on the radio, and so to have songs that mean things to people that were never on television, never on the radio, that's also gratifying.
Uh-huh. What do you want to kind of, do you have a vision what you want to do going forward? I mean, I feel like the society's always cut up with your music in one way or the other, fortunate or unfortunate way. But
Yeah.
is there something that you want to do that you maybe haven't, or kind of do you see a little a tunnel that you want to head into, and kind of explore musically?
Well, I took a shot at writing some musicals about 7, 8 years ago, which was a good experience. Unfortunately, they never came to fruition. It's just a lot of work and a lot of time. I
Mm.
grew up kind of singing Broadway, but I don't know. I'm hoping to be able to kind of write some songs that are just kind of like, here's some songs, not like here's this thing that happened. But I'm
Mhm.
also, because I have this platform now. I do think there's some larger projects I can do with international artists to continue to raise awareness for some of these things. And I enjoy playing, and I do a lot of stuff in my life outside of music. We have a family business that I work with my son and my dad.
Oh,
Um,
wow. What kind of
yeah,
business is it?
we make shopping carts. If you shop at Costco, you use our shopping carts. So
Oh, well,
it's
I've used them plenty of times then. I
yeah,
like how
yeah,
big they are and wide, and
yep.
sort of you can fit everything in there.
So I have this strange life of this music thing and then
Wow.
this, down and dirty welding, manufacturing business. And I think they both serve me well. It keeps me grounded. It keeps me in the real world. I see
Hmm.
the American dream every day. You have to meet a payroll, you deal with problems and you meet
Yeah.
with customers. So I think that's been really helpful for me to kind of, remain grounded and understand that all this kind of celebrity stuff at the end of the day is pretty shallow. But if you can use it to shine the light on people who deserve it, that's why I appreciate the platform I do have.
Yeah, and it's great that you get to work with your son. That's cool. That a family business is kind of special in a way. You're in a sense not only passing it down, but you're creating something and bonding at the same time. That's fantastic to be able to do that.
It's beautiful. It's a blessing, and you only have a certain window. My dad's 85. He's still going
Yeah.
strong, but we appreciate this time together. And
Three generations right there.
yeah, and certainly getting through COVID, like any business, was a challenge. And
Hmm.
there's always challenges, especially in California running a business. But it's great. It's a lot of fun. And I always enjoy going to a town, meeting with a buyer, having lunch with someone, and then doing a rock concert that night. I have a
That's amazing.
weird life, man. I have a weird life.
That's an amazing. Hey, not many can say that. You get a card for someone, and then I mean, to buy some groceries, then come to the show later that night.
Yeah.
That's amazing. That's a cool life to live. But it seems like you've taken it all in stride, and appreciate the moments. Because
Yeah.
they're fleeting. But if you kind of take it in, it's hits you different. It's really pretty incredible that you get to also visit these places and see what the world's like. Not many people can see the world and actually go to these people. And we hear about what's going on, but we can't connect. But that's pretty incredible. You get to connect and meet these people firsthand too, in so many ways.
Yeah, I'm very blessed, very fortunate. I've met some amazing people. There's a lot of heroes out there, And
Absolutely.
wish everybody could stand in my shoes in some of these spots. I know there's a lot of different opinions, and it's America. It's great. But when you go to Ukraine, when you go to Israel, you talk to these people, I think you get a better sense of what's really happening, not just what you see on the news and not just what you hear by, people ranting on Twitter.
Yeah. It's not easy, like your song says, and then Superman many times doesn't wear a cape,
That's
in
true.
life. So
Yeah.
you get to see that. Man, this has been so much fun, John. I've been like I said, 20 years, 15 at least of listening to your music. I'm in my mid-30s now, but it's been a fun ride, to kind of see and still listen to the new stuff. I thought OK was just phenomenal. Visually, the video, for those that haven't seen it, gotta check it out. I think it's a call to action in so many ways too. And I'm excited to see what's next from you, because I always feel you're kind of got the pulse of the world in a sense, and at least care about it. And I think that's really important, to have a voice and speak out, because being quiet about something and having a thought, or being able to do something and not doing it, is a life of regrets, I feel like. You know what I mean? And one way, if you live truthfully, and you're truthful to yourself and your passions and causes, I think that kind of multiplies and makes a difference eventually.
Well, that's beautifully said. And I think you're right. Look, sometimes we make mistakes. Sometimes we maybe say things we like to take back. But I think, to kind of not address the moment, I think we would regret that. And we all have a role to play.
Sure.
You don't have to be a podcast host, a singer. We all have a role to play, in our own way. And it really is a team effort. Nobody can do this alone. And I think, those who claim to be the silent majority need to become the non-silent majority, and
Mhm.
that's what we're trying to push along.
Yeah, it takes a village to build something, or make a message too. So when you're quiet, nothing usually happens. You know what I mean? That's one thing said. So it's great that you're doing what you're doing. And anywhere people can connect with you, or check out any links you want to share, or things
Yeah.
for others to come and see your work, and or tour dates that are coming up. Are you going on tour again, by the way?
Yeah, thank you for mentioning that. We'll be in Florida and Atlanta at the end of May, and then we'll be all
Nice.
across America during the summer with the rock band. And all the links are for shows are at fightforfighting.com. Fight for Fighting Music on Instagram, John Ondrasik on Twitter. You can find kind of all the stuff there, Facebook, Fight for Fighting. So yeah, I really appreciate the folks who kind of support my efforts and kind of, join the ride, because as I said, we're all soldiers and the army for good things.
Mhm.
And I think, as I said, we have to dress this together, and I love to see everybody at the shows too. There's nothing better than having your song sung back to you. So I hope to see a lot of folks. And Jim, I expect to see you next time we're in Chicago, baby.
Yes,
I
or I'll
expect to
be in
see you.
LA too this summer probably. So if you're around there, then you're in the area. So I'll swing by for sure if there's a show.
Well, you're always on the guest list, my friend.
Oh, I love it. John, you keep on fighting the good fight, and that 5 minutes, 5 for 5 minute, I mean, that hockey term there, you don't want to be in that box for 5 minutes. You want to be constantly into action and doing something, you know what I mean? So it
Go
rings
Kings, go.
true. Well,
Thank you,
good luck
buddy.
to the Kings, and hopefully they can at least squeeze a game or so. And I hope to talk to you soon and stay in touch with you for sure.
I look forward to it. Take care, buddy.
Thank you, John, so much.
All right.
Take care. Talk soon.
Bye-bye. Thank
Bye-bye.
you.